Hey internet friends, how are you? No, really, how are you? Did you get your flu shot this year? According to the media, there's a massive flu outbreak underway, with flu deaths reportedly surpassing the Tide Pod body count. While the flu vaccine is only 10% effective this year, the Center for Disease Control, through the mouthpiece of the corporate media, continues to encourage the masses to line up for their flu shot. Because what happens if you don't? What ifs and great unknowns are supposed to scare you to the core, not prompt you to do your research about the substances injected into yours and your children's bodies to fend off influenza. I was going to say that was a slight exaggeration on my part, depicting the media, but actually it was right on point. The media sells fear, rarely facts. That's why today we're going to discuss what the media won't tell us about the flu. Warning, I'm not a doctor, nor am I any sort of medical professional, so please do not take anything I say as medical advice. Thank you. Influenza is an Italian word for diseases originating around 1504, with its original use implying astral, occult, or atmospheric influence. Over time, we've shortened it to just the flu, and commonly use it to describe a severe cold, but that's technically an incorrect use of the term, since by definition the flu is a highly contagious virus that attacks the respiratory system. And experts say that the flu is spread mainly by droplets from when people sneeze, cough, or talk. If you're like me, I've wondered perhaps once or twice why the flu has its own season. Why not just stick around all year? I mean, take your shoes off and get comfortable. But the flu's just here for the winter, and there's several theories as to why. One of those is people are spending more time indoors in close quarters with other folks. Another theory is that during the winter months, the lack of vitamin D in the winter weakens the immune system. The third theory is that the flu virus just prefers cold, dry air as opposed to the oppressive heat and humidity of the summer. Lately, I've seen various media outlets cite the deadly Spanish flu of 1918 as a talking point that leads up to the flu vaccine pitch. Oh, and it's a good talking point. The 1918 flu managed to kill more people in 1 year than the bubonic plague did in 4. The flu spread as soldiers fanned out across the globe, spreading their germs and their bullets in World War I. During a time when warring nations feared that their enemies might stoop to biological warfare as a means of achieving victory. What a crazy idea, right? The Spanish flu was unique in that it targeted individuals in their prime. You know, the age that people are making babies and are fit enough to fight in wars. Ultimately, the flu of 1918 infected an estimated 500 million people, killing between 20 and 40 million of those folks, with around 675,000 of those being American. Problem: the Spanish influenza caused people to die. Reaction: the living panicked, and a portion of those deaths were a result of self-imposed isolation. Victims didn't exclusively die from the flu virus, but as a result of starvation from being too weak to go get supplies, and friends and family being too afraid to bring any. Long after the flu season ended, fear remained. Solution: create a vaccination not with the expectation or goal of eliminating the virus, but the goal or expectation to weaken its impact. The word vaccinate stems from the technique of preventing smallpox by injecting people with another virus, the cowpox virus. And to get even more specific, vacca is the Latin word for cow. By the 1940s, scientists had developed a working vaccine that was used on soldiers during World War II. To break down in an oversimplified manner exactly how the flu vaccine works, it's updated continually, as the virus itself is constantly changing. So basically, the vaccine makers take educated guesses about which flu virus strains to use each year. That's why it's possible to catch the flu even if you get your flu shot, because the vaccine doesn't cover all strains of the flu. And interestingly, for the last 70 years, flu vaccines have been grown in chicken eggs, even though now scientists are saying that flu vaccines grown in eggs can cause more mutations, rendering the product you're injected with ineffective by the time it gets into your body. This season's flu vaccine was especially ineffective. The number of influenza-associated pediatric deaths has totaled 37 as of today, January 31st, 2018. Select schools across 12 states have closed due to flu outbreaks. And news stories about the latest deaths of healthy young individuals are published every hour on the hour, giving only a passing mention of the pre-existing conditions the victim might have had before contracting the flu, but being sure to highlight the theory that if this person had received their flu shot, this person might not have succumbed to flu complications like pneumonia that ultimately claimed their brief life. And I gotta say, I haven't seen a single journalist address the work culture or economic conditions in which we live that contribute to our daily lives being like a weird, gross petri dish. A lot of folks can't afford to take off work when they're sick, and a lot of these same folks rely on public schools as daycare. So you better believe they're sending their children back to school before the flu has run its course. No, pretty much all I see and hear is fear being sold, selective history being showcased, and vaccines being pushed. So who exactly is benefiting from flu vaccines if the people getting injected aren't? Of course, there are pharmaceutical industry folks, whom some refer to as Big Pharma, who would push to have your child injected with experimental drugs so their child can go to private school. In 1983, Congress authorized the CDC to accept external gifts from the industry and private parties, meaning theoretically the CDC is allowed to accept bribes from pharmaceutical companies. Is it possible that these external gifts have some sway in how the CDC reports their numbers? If we take a look back at history and various flu outbreaks that were hyped by the media, how many of the stories published were out of genuine concern for the well-being of the American public? In 2005, there were rumors of an avian superflu that could have killed 1.9 million Americans. In response to this threat, the Bush administration immediately purchased $80 million of Tamiflu, a drug prescribed to treat the flu. George W. Bush's Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld held major stock and was at one time chairman of the company, which held rights over Tamiflu at that time. In 2009, the swine flu pandemic made headlines, with the CDC calling on all Americans to take the swine flu vaccine. But a CBS reporter, Cheryl Atkinson, discovered that during this pandemic, the CDC had stopped counting swine flu cases, and the cases they had counted as swine flu could not be attributed to any sort of flu at all. Those are two recent examples of profit being made off of flu hype. But is monetary profit the only goal of selling fear? Perhaps depopulation could be another goal beyond the monetary. We have the United Nations Agenda 21, which is a global action plan marketed as being about sustainability, but points towards an action plan to depopulate the world, a goal which is etched in stone at the mysterious Georgia Guidestones. Maybe that sounds crazy to y'all, but have you ever gotten any sort of information about your flu vaccine prior to getting jabbed? Any sort of literature? Any ingredients list? The flu vaccine contains egg protein, formaldehyde, and a mercury-based preservative, among other ingredients. Studies have shown that pregnant women who receive the flu shot are 4 times more likely to have spontaneous miscarriages compared to pregnant women who did not get vaccinated. In 1986, the Supreme Court granted immunity to drug companies against certain lawsuits arising from injuries or deaths associated with vaccines. This came 10 years after an outbreak of swine flu at Fort Dix in New Jersey. And in response, President Gerald Ford announced that the federal government would vaccinate the entire U.S. population. As a result of the vaccine, a percentage of those vaccinated developed Guillain-Barré syndrome, which left people with nerve damage and paralysis. This persists as an ongoing issue with the flu vaccine, but still the vaccine is encouraged for everybody over the age of 6 months. 170 million doses of the vaccine were produced for the 2015-2016 flu season in the United States compared to 32 million in 1990. Problem: in our global world where travel is readily available, our germs spread and the flu kills people, as it always has. But this year's flu shot wasn't as effective as it had been in recent years. Reaction: the media turned the dial all the way up on fear, and continues to. Solution: line up to get your vaccine. Google's venture arm, Alphabet Inc., announced mid-January that they were investing in a UK company that was set on developing a vaccine to fight all types of the flu, which sounds great on paper. But maybe I'd feel a little more optimistic if Google hadn't ditched their "Don't Be Evil" motto when Alphabet became Google's parent company in 2015. So what do you think, internet friends? Will you be getting your flu shot? Do you trust the CDC, or by extension the media, to report accurate statistics? Do you believe there's motivation beyond the public's best interests in hyping up the flu hysteria? Let me know. I always look forward to your comments. Thank you so much for subscribing and supporting my channel on Patreon. Bye!